to spend this great day with you. I know Martin Luther King Day, of course, has tremendous meaning to all of us, and to be able to be here today in a free, open forum to share.
He's calling in.
Oh, okay, no problem. I thought I'd accidentally somehow dial off of my phone or something like that. Very good. But anyway, just a day that means it represents equality and the hard work that was done so that people, everybody in society, could be here with questions and participate in democracy equally. An incredible opportunity to be here today. And so again, thank you. There's a couple people that I do. Whose phone is it? Is that mine?
It sounds like it's coming.
I'm supposed to take that call.
I don't think so. I don't have anybody calling me.
No.
Anybody win the Super Bowl here or something like that? I don't know. That's kind of funny. Wanted to introduce a couple of people before we get started. Dan Betts. Everybody say hello to Dan Betts. Dan is out of my Fort Collins office. If you have a question about anything that we can help you with, please let Dan know. And Christy is in my office as well in Fort Collins. So everybody say hello to Christy. And make sure that if you didn't get a chance to sign up for our email list, that you'll be able to, so that we can continue to stay in contact. And Mike Bennett. Mike Bennett is my district director, so please make sure that he gets a chance to say hello to you. Thank you for that. And I do want to introduce anybody who is an elected official in the room. And I'll start with Kevin Lundberg, State Senator. Thank you very much for being here. And Donna, I was going to introduce you, but I think you no longer are on the Loveland City Council.
Thank you.
But Donna, thanks for your service. Very good. And is there any other elected official in the room that I have missed? Town councils, county commissions, county councils? Well, again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and share with you. I thought what I'd do is just spend a little time, I thought what I'd do is spend a little bit of a time talking about just an overview of what happened this past year, and then talk about some of the things that we anticipate or expect to come up this next year, and then turn it over to you for a question and answer session, because I think that's the most important way to listen and to learn, is to get to have that discussion. We were counting up this morning. We've already held 2 town meetings this morning. We held one in Morgan County and one in Weld County. This is our 58th town meeting since November of 2010. So thank you very much for being here and being a part of number 58. And as you know, the districts will change after this year, so it's great to continue to represent Larimer County, and we'll continue to work every bit as hard today to represent Larimer County. And thank you for being here. So this past year, I was able to serve right after the election. I think many of you knew that I had served on the Transition Committee. Was appointed to the Transition Committee. The Transition Committee is made up of, roughly about 25 members of the Republican Party. And the reason it's a partisan committee is because it was the transition of the House majority from Democrat to Republican. Had it been a Democrat takeover from the Republicans, a Transition Committee would have been a Democrat-composed Transition Committee, and I've not been on it. The Transition Committee was the first committee that we were appointed to, and that committee, I think, is really a good segue into the rest of our discussion, because it shows what can be done when people really work hard about changing the way things are currently being done. Through the Transition Committee, we took a look at the rules of the House of Representatives. We changed the schedule, the way the calendar works, and we changed the way our budgets operate, and we changed the way the flow of business happens on the House floor. As a result of the service on the Transition Committee, just a month ago, 2 months ago, they announced that we have been able to save over $200 million simply by making the calendar work more efficiently, the floor time work more efficiently, and we've reduced our congressional budgets by over 10%. And so I think when it comes to the big spending issues that face our country, we can start by a Transition Committee that simply took a look at the way we were doing business as usual and said, no, we're not going to do business as usual, and let's start cutting spending in our own backyard first. Throughout the 112th Congress, I have said that my focus would be, and it has continued to be, that our economy, job creation, economic growth, and economic opportunity. Beginning on January 5th, when we started to make sure that we took a strong look at regulations and what was happening to many of our businesses around the state. I introduced several pieces of legislation, many of which we've talked about before. A small business savings account, we've talked about that. It's a bill that was introduced that would allow people to save money, grow their investment, and when they're ready to invest it into job creation, they can take it out without paying a tax on the gain. Introduced a bill called HR 2021, the Jobs and Energy Permitting Act. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail than I have in the past. This bill was passed with bipartisan support last summer. But one of the exciting things that has just happened in the past couple of weeks is one of the areas of development that we were pushing for with HR 2021. But the EPA has now granted the permit. So what took 5 to 6 years hung up in a bureaucracy that we were trying to address with the bill, they are finally starting to move forward with it. So we think we've done some good work with a strong bipartisan bill. And the reason this bill is important, the reason the Jobs and Energy Permitting Act is important, just one of the projects in one area could create as many as 50,000 jobs around the country. 50,000 jobs around the country with as many as 1 million barrels of oil a day being brought online into this nation, or produced in this nation. Being brought in from Alaska. So it's pretty incredible to think about the opportunity that we have to produce 1 million barrels of oil a day in the United States. That's enough oil to replace our imports from Saudi Arabia. And we can do it right here in our own backyard instead of relying on foreign nations or overseas. So an incredible opportunity. And that bill's been introduced with bipartisan support in the Senate. Also introduced a bill called dealing with the General Accountability Office, a GAO report. We've talked about that before. One of the things that we're going to do this year to highlight some of the inefficiencies and duplication in government, we're going to ask the heads of these departments of government who are in charge of duplicative agencies, duplicative programs, to come in and come before Congress, their respective committees, and testify. Let me give you an example. There are 82 different teacher quality monitoring programs within the Department of Education. So we're going to ask all 82 of those program heads to come in and testify before Congress. Testify why their teacher quality monitoring program is different than the person who testified before them or after them, and their teacher quality monitoring program. So I think it'll be a good way for us to understand the inefficiencies of government and what is happening. This upcoming year, we'll continue to focus on jobs and the economy. Just last 2 months ago, we sent a letter to the Department of Labor. For those of you in agriculture, you have seen this regulation that the Department of Labor is trying to promulgate that would basically make it impossible, against the rules, for teenagers to work on a farm that doesn't belong to their mom or their dad. They couldn't go work for their uncle's farm under certain conditions. Now, somebody who grew up in agriculture, somebody who grew up on the Eastern Plains, I think that's a big threat to our agricultural communities when we can't even give our next generation of farmers and ranchers the experience they need to come back to the farm and ranch because of a regulation. And so we're addressing that regulation, asking them to make sure that they don't do something that will hurt the future of Colorado or this country's agriculture. We've also been very involved in the aerospace industry. Just down the road from Loveland, Colorado, there is an incredible opportunity at the ACE project to partner with NASA and other government sector actors with the private sector to develop aerospace industry jobs. How many of you knew that Colorado has the second highest jobs in aerospace in the country? Colorado is the second highest in the country when it comes to aerospace industry jobs, second only to California. And so what we can do to partner with the ACE project, what we can do to partner with private businesses to really make a strong run in Colorado, not only to benefit northern Colorado, but what we can do throughout this state to create jobs and economic opportunity. We sent a letter to the governor recently saying you have tried to make Front Range Airport a spaceport designation. We want to work with you on other ways to not only bolster Front Range Airport's effort, but to bolster ways in northern and eastern Colorado to take advantage of so many positive aspects that the aerospace industry presents for Colorado. So we have some incredible opportunities that we should be pursuing and continuing. Over the past several months, we have been working on regulation reform. The RAINS Act, many of you may have heard about. The RAINS Act is an idea that's sort of basic. I think it's an idea very similar to what we have in Colorado. In Colorado, if there's a rule or regulation that's promulgated at the Department of Agriculture or other, then the state legislature has a chance to review that regulation to make sure it's in the best interests of Colorado. The RAINS Act says if there is a certain regulation that has a major or significant impact on the economy of this country, then that regulation has to come through Congress to make sure that Congress has, again, the ability to make sure that a regulation isn't going too far and hurting our economy. We've passed the TRAIN Act this fall. The TRAIN Act said that when it comes to certain regulations and energy issues, not only will you take a look at the cumulative effect that regulation has on the price of energy, but what that price of energy then means for manufacturing and the economy, what it could do to jobs and the impact it could have on jobs if the price of energy were to increase. And so those are all ways that we are trying to keep an eye and a handle on what's happening with our economy to make sure that we are focusing on creating jobs in this country. This nation has faced this nation has faced 8% or higher unemployment for 35 months. It's the longest period of time since the Great Depression. We have got a lot of work to do to make sure that we can do everything we can to put people back to work in this country so that we can reduce that 8% level of unemployment. We've got to get on top of that. We've got to start doing work to reduce that unacceptably high unemployment level. This upcoming year, we'll be introducing legislation dealing again with energy, renewable energy, trying to make sure that we have the ability to, when we produce renewable energy, to site those energy transmission lines through federal areas where the bureaucracy has been tough to deal with. We'll be dealing with legislation concerning energy policy on the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and what it means to the United States if there is a conflict with the Strait of Hormuz and what that could mean to our worldwide energy supply, energy availability. We'll be dealing with rural healthcare issues, and again, excited to announce some of the other projects that we'll be doing in February. If in agriculture you'd like to join us for a farm policy roundtable on February 20th and 22nd. Dan, am I getting these dates right? Okay, February 20th and 22nd, we're going to hold a...
What's that?
20th and 22nd of February for the farm policy roundtables.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to be holding these roundtables, one in Greeley, one in Yuma, and one in Lamar in southeastern Colorado. So the 20th will be Greeley and Yuma, the 22nd will be Lamar. Now I've always felt a little bit guilty about holding a meeting or a function in Yuma, because to me it feels like cheating since that's my hometown. But when you look at the overall ag production of Yuma County, it ranks as one of the top counties not only in the state but in the country for agricultural production. So at least, you know, it may be pulling a hometown, but at least it's in the right area. But excited to continue to work with you and learn from you as we move forward and address the economy. And I think it's appropriate now that I also talk about water. We're here in the office of Northern Colorado Water Conservancy District. I want to thank them for opening up the facility and allowing us to have this meeting here. And I'm sure it's open to anybody who wants to have a meeting here. But one of the things that it's important to identify, this year our snowpack is 69% of average. At this point in the year, 69% of average. The South Platte River Basin is a little bit better than that. I think the last snowtell figures are about 80% of average. That's still 20% below what it should be this time of the year. In our conversations with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, they have said that conditions in the beginning of 2012 are very similar to what they were the beginning of 2002. And if you remember the drought of 2002. Remember what that year brought us. It brought us the Hayman Fire. It brought us a drought that eliminated about 50% of the cow-calf herd in southeastern Colorado, an area of the country that an area of the state that still hasn't actually regained its footing completely from that drought. And if we are going to have a long-term outlook for economic growth, water is absolutely a critical part of that. We must have the water that is necessary to survive, to thrive, and to grow. And that's not just to meet the needs of population. That's to meet the needs of agriculture and industry to continue and maintain that strong economy. So with that being said, that's why I think we need to go forward with projects like NISP. And that's why I think we need to continue to look for other new projects to get those projects on, not only on the books, but developed. When it comes to water supplies, storage isn't the only answer. Conservation is another answer. We've done a great deal over the past decade to increase and improve our water efficiency and the conservation efforts that we have undertaken. But it's not going to be enough to meet those projected needs according to the statewide water supply initiative. Because we know that if we were to build every single water project that's on the books today, we'd still be short. We've got to do more. Conservation is a part of it. Water storage is a part of it. And that's why we need to partner with the federal government to make sure that we are listening to the needs of local water users. So with that, thank you. I'm sure, Mike, if I missed something, it's something that we wanted to cover, wanted to talk about. We may get into some of these charts over here. This is my preferred PowerPoint. Don't have to operate a computer this way. It doesn't get unplugged. It's always on. So we can talk about those as we go through. But at this point, we'd love to answer. Now, I have a first question that I am supposed to give, and I will tell you why. We were at a meeting in Weld County, and this particular individual raised his hand, and I started to call on him. And I said, oh, no, you're from Larimer County, not from Weld County. I have to call on a Weld County person. So now we're in Larimer County. I will yield to the gentleman who I missed the